Have you ever stopped to think about what happens during a stroke? Also known as a CVA, a stroke occurs when the flow of blood to the brain is interrupted, either by a blockage or a leak. This can cause serious damage to brain cells, which makes it essential to act quickly when the first signs appear. Identifying these signs may seem complicated, but it's actually simpler than it sounds. Imagine, for example, that someone starts to feel a sudden weakness on one side of their body, or perhaps has difficulty speaking or understanding what others are saying. These are classic signs that shouldn't be ignored. Today we're going to talk about the signs you should look out for so as not to put yourself at risk. I urge you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos. Number 1. Sudden weakness or numbness on one side of the body. Our brain is like the control center for everything we do. It is divided into two hemispheres, each controlling the opposite side of the body. The right side of the brain takes care of the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain takes care of the right side. When a stroke occurs, i.e., when blood flow is interrupted in one part of the brain, the cells in that area begin to suffer and are unable to function properly. Now, imagine that the stroke happens on the left side of the brain. As this side controls the right side of the body, you may start to feel weakness or numbness in your right arm, leg, or face. The same happens if the stroke is on the right side of the brain, affecting the left side of the body. This weakness or numbness is like a warning from the body saying, "Hey, something's not right here." That's why it's so important to pay attention to these signs. They indicate that the brain needs urgent help, and the sooner you act, the better the chances of recovery. Number 2. Difficulty speaking or understanding speech. Our brain has specific areas responsible for language. The main ones are Broca's area, which helps produce speech, and Wernicke's area, which helps us understand what we hear. These areas are, in most people, in the left hemisphere of the brain. Now imagine that a stroke interrupts the flow of blood to one of these areas. Suddenly, the brain can't process words as it should. If Broca's area is affected, you may notice that someone begins to have difficulty forming words or sentences, even if they know what they want to say. Words can come out garbled or confused. Now, if Wernicke's area is affected, the person may speak in sentences that seem fluid but make no sense, or they may have difficulty understanding what others are saying. This kind of difficulty speaking or understanding speech is a clear sign that something is not working properly in the brain. It's as if the body's communication center is having technical problems. So if you notice that someone is talking strangely or can't understand what you're saying, it's time to act fast. Number 3. Sudden loss of vision in one or both eyes. Our brain is responsible for processing everything we see. The part that takes care of vision is the occipital lobe, located at the back of the head. In addition, the eyes send visual information to the brain via the optic nerve. Now, imagine that a stroke interrupts the flow of blood to these areas or to the pathways that carry information from the eyes to the brain. When this happens, the brain can struggle to process what the eyes are seeing. This can result in a sudden loss of vision in one eye, both eyes, or even a part of the visual field, as if a piece of vision has simply disappeared. This symptom is like the brain saying, "Hey, I'm not getting the visual information correctly." Sudden loss of vision is not normal and can be a serious sign that the brain is suffering from a lack of oxygen and nutrients due to the stroke. Number 4. Dizziness or sudden loss of balance. Have you ever suddenly felt dizzy or like the world was spinning? Perhaps you've even tried to balance yourself, but to no avail. This kind of dizziness or sudden loss of balance is not something to ignore, as it could be a sign of something more serious. Our body is like a finely tuned machine, and the brain, which is in control, is responsible for coordinating all our movements. One of the most important areas for this is the cerebellum, which is at the back of the brain. The cerebellum has a very important job. It maintains our posture, coordinates our movements, and of course ensures that we can keep our balance. When the blood flow to this part of the brain is interrupted due to a stroke, the body can lose control, causing a feeling of imbalance. Imagine that your body is trying to follow the brain's orders, but the brain isn't getting the messages right. The result? An unexpected dizziness, or even a total loss of balance. It can be so sudden that you find yourself trying to hold on to something, or even falling over without being able to understand what has happened. Number 5. Sudden intense headache with no apparent cause. Have you ever had a headache so bad that it feels like your head is going to explode, but you can't figure out where it came from? First of all, it's worth remembering that everyone has experienced a headache at some point in their life, whether due to tiredness, stress, or even a bad night's sleep. But when the pain is intense and sudden and you don't have an obvious reason for it, like a hangover or the flu, this already starts to raise a few red flags. So what happens? In the case of a stroke, what may be happening is that the blood flow to a part of the brain has been interrupted, either by a blockage, as in ischemic stroke, or by bleeding, as in hemorrhagic stroke. When this happens, the brain is deprived of the oxygen and nutrients it needs to function properly, and the pain is a kind of warning cry that something is wrong. The sudden, intense headache arises because the brain is trying to cope with this lack of oxygen. The brain itself doesn't feel pain. It has no pain receptors. But the areas around the brain, such as blood vessels and tissues, can feel the pressure and irritation caused by the interruption in blood flow. The result is a headache that can be much stronger than any ordinary headache. Number 6. Sudden loss of consciousness or fainting. Have you ever seen someone suddenly faint or lose consciousness and wondered, what happened? It can be frightening, but it's important to know that sudden loss of consciousness or fainting can be a sign of a stroke. I'll explain what's behind it in a very calm way. The brain, which is our body's command center, needs a constant flow of oxygen and nutrients to function properly. When this flow of blood is interrupted, for example, due to a stroke, the brain begins to shut down. And one of the body's first reactions to deal with this can be loss of consciousness. The brain simply can no longer keep track of everything that's going on in the body, so it temporarily shuts down. This fainting does not happen without reason. The brain is trying to protect the body, since it is not receiving the oxygen it needs to function properly. When blood flow is blocked or interrupted, the body can react suddenly, causing the person to lose consciousness as a way of minimizing the impact and trying to reset the system. In addition, loss of consciousness can be accompanied by other symptoms such as difficulty speaking, blurred vision, weakness on one side of the body, and severe headache. If all this happens at the same time, it's a clear sign that the brain is experiencing an emergency. So if someone faints without explanation or loses consciousness for no apparent reason, it's important to seek medical help immediately. Don't ignore it, because speedy care can be decisive for recovery. In the event of a stroke, the quicker the treatment, the better the chances of avoiding permanent damage. Number 7. Loss of feeling on one side of the body. Have you ever had the feeling that one side of your body was numb, or had a sudden loss of feeling, as if it had switched off for a moment? It may be a momentary scare, but when it happens, unexpectedly and for no apparent reason, it's important to pay attention, as it could be a sign of a stroke. Our brain is like the body's command center, and it has the task of coordinating all our movements, sensations, and functions. It works like a big radio station, sending signals to every part of the body via the nervous system. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The right side controls the left side of the body, and the left side controls the right side. So if there is an interruption in the flow of blood to one of these brain areas, as happens in a stroke. The brain loses the ability to send the necessary signals to the parts of the body. When this happens, for example in a stroke on the left side of the brain, the right side of the body can start to lose feeling. You may feel your hand or arm, for example, going numb, or the sensation that something isn't working properly. The sensation can vary. Sometimes it's a complete loss of touch. Other times it's a tingling or weakness in the affected area. And the same happens if the stroke occurs on the right side of the brain, affecting the left side of the body. So, you've learned a lot about the signs of a stroke, haven't you? And I hope that this has made you more aware of the importance of paying attention to these symptoms. What may seem like something simple, such as dizziness or a severe headache, could be a warning from the body asking for urgent help. Now, to close the topic, the most important thing is to understand that time is one of your greatest allies when it comes to stroke. The sooner you seek medical help, the better your chances of recovery. Because the brain is so vital to our body, it needs immediate attention if something happens. And acting quickly can make all the difference. If you or someone around you notices any strange signs, whether it's loss of sensation, difficulty speaking, severe headache, or loss of balance, it's essential to seek medical attention as soon as possible. Remember, symptoms can be sudden, but help doesn't have to be delayed. Don't be alarmed by these signs, but don't ignore them either. It's always better to err on the side of caution and see a doctor to make sure everything is okay. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, too. Keep up to date with upcoming videos. See you there.